I think the Palestine-Israel is a different conflict than all the other conflicts, right? So Ukraine, Russia, China, these are all provoked by the United States. And what's happening in Ukraine is just a money laundering operation. And it's there so that we could have more liquefied natural gas from Western countries sold to Europe. And that's why we bombed the Nord Stream pipeline. And, Joe Biden had predicted he would do it in February, right? He said if Putin has tanks that go across into Ukraine, we're going to end the Nord Stream pipeline. So that's what this was always about. And it was provoked. We provoked Putin to do that. But, what's funny is that everybody starts the story of Ukraine with Putin's invasion. But the way I tell it, it's like if Putin was standing at a bus stop and there was an old lady in the street and there was a bus coming right for her, and Putin pushed that lady down on the sidewalk to get out of the bus, the mainstream media starts that story. Putin pushes old lady down, and they leave out the beginning. Like, no, there was a bus coming, and he was trying to save. So they forget. They leave out the part that in 2014, the United States and the CIA instituted a coup in Ukraine with the right-wing Nazis, and the people in the eastern part of Ukraine didn't want to go along with that coup government, and so they resisted it. And so that coup government, the Nazis, started bombing the Donbass. There actually was a peace agreement called the Minsk Accords. Guess who broke that? Ukraine. It wasn't Russia. It wasn't Putin. It wasn't the people of the Donbass. So finally, after 8 years of shelling and 2 peace agreements that were broken, and the threat of putting Ukraine into NATO, and all Putin said, hey, if you just promise me you won't put them into Ukraine, I won't invade. They wouldn't do that. Why? Because they wanted this to happen, because they when they ended Afghanistan, they needed a new war for the military-industrial complex. Which is when people were giving Biden all that credit for ending Afghanistan, even though he did it horribly, people were still giving him credit. I was like, well, let's wait and see what he's going to do with that money that they've been spending in Afghanistan, because I bet they have another war up their sleeve, and son of a bitch they did. It was Ukraine, which they've been ramping up for at least 8 years, and they've admitted that they've been doing this and ramping up and provoking this, and anybody who knows anything about it, this was completely 100% provoked. They wanted this to happen. They ramped up the bombing in February so Putin would invade. They doubled it. So that's what's happening, and the same thing, and if you think Russia and China, we have 800 military bases around the world. We just built 3 more in the Philippines to get ready for this saber rattling with China, and they just built a military base in Syria. As they call Putin a thug and a gangster for doing what he's doing in Ukraine, we are occupying a country right next door, a third of it. Which third? The oil part. And we just built a military base there, and that's why they hate Trump, because he told the truth about it. When they asked him, hey, why are you leaving troops there? And he said, for the oil. It's our oil. They can't have he told the truth about our foreign policy, and that's why they got to get rid of him.
Yeah, a quick response to that. You're absolutely right. The Ukraine situation has been a marketing campaign to basically, most Americans could not pick out Ukraine on a map.
That's right.
Of just Ukraine. So I think what's going on in Israel and Palestine, the U.S. does not need to get involved in that. They might fund an operation. They might be involved. They're not going to have boots on the ground. They're not getting involved in that whatsoever. And you've seen the numbers, how Americans, especially even Democrats, have plummeted for their approval of what's going on in Ukraine. Do we have those numbers? But in the biggest problem in
Adam, what are you getting to? Because I'm trying to read this poll here. What are you getting to?
No, is that America should not focus necessarily.
All right, so let me read this story.
They're focused on Ukraine.
Going back on what you were talking about, Ukrainians. Fewer Americans support arming Ukraine poll. This is the Hill. A Reuters poll or survey a significant drop in supporting Americans for sending arms to Ukraine, with only 41% of respondents favoring such action in October, down from 65% in June of 2023. That's a big drop, by the way, 24%. Support for sending arms to Ukraine has declined across political parties. Democratic support dropped from 81% to 52%, and Republican support dropped from 56 to 35. Independent support went from 57 to 44. The survey also indicates that support for sending financial aid to Ukraine is even lower, with 37% of respondents favoring it in October survey. The decline in support comes amidst debates over government funding and evolving dynamics of 2024 GOP presidential primary.
You know, we had this really extended media cycle about the pipes in Flint, Michigan. And then it expanded after the Flint, Michigan pipes. The kids are getting sick. There's Legionnaire's disease. The water was bad. Then we learn it's bad in Newark. Then we learn it's bad in Pittsburgh. And all of these Democrats are coming out saying we must get funding to fix this. And now all these people are saying we must give this money to Ukraine so we can have war. And I said, I have a compromise. How about we fix all the pipes in Pittsburgh, Newark? Flint apparently is doing better, but Let's build American infrastructure. Let's help the poor in our cities. Let's whatever education program, whatever healthcare program. Hey, how about the $250 billion or whatever goes here? But the weirdest thing to me is to see young leftists on social media being like, "We have to stand with Ukraine." I'm like, why? And so I think the hypocrisy right there for me and the people I know, they're asking themselves, why did we spend all this money over there when we had a decade of water problems in our own country? But more importantly, when I pulled up the battle map a couple weeks ago of Ukraine, I was shocked because I wasn't tracking the on-the-ground stuff with Ukraine as much. I was shocked to discover that Russia won. Because they've been telling us over and over and over again that we're winning. Russia's decimated. They're conscripting people. They're in panic. And there's these videos of like the Ukrainian soldier flicking the cigarette and being like, "Love Ukraine" or whatever. And then you pull up the battle map and you're like, wait, so Russia secured the entire Donbass land bridge from the Donbass, the land bridge into Crimea, which was their stated goal. So I feel like every story coming out saying we are winning and let's go. And I'm like, Russia wanted to control access to Crimea. It's their access to the Mediterranean, through the Black Sea, through the Bosphorus, into the Mediterranean, because that's how they ship a lot of their oil and gas. And what the threat was to them was that if Ukraine joins NATO and the EU, it cuts off Crimea. Well, first of all, before all this in 2014, before Crimea was basically taken by Russia, and they had a referendum, call it whatever you want, the threat Russia's facing is we have the Sevastopol base. We transport a lot of our energy through here. If Ukraine falls to the EU and NATO, we lose access to the Mediterranean. We can't allow that. So first thing they do, they walk out of their naval base in Sevastopol and say, we're already here actually, quote unquote referendum, take it. With the expansion of the war, they needed to secure access into Crimea outside of just the actual bridge over water, which we saw bombed not that long ago. Now I'm looking at this map and we have it right here. Wow, Russia's secured land access into Crimea, which was my understanding was their stated goal. They're pushing past towards Odessa now, which is insane. And when I talk to neocon types, pro-war establishment types on the left or liberal Democrat, whatever you want to call it, they keep saying no. Vladimir Putin wants Poland. No, Vladimir Putin. And I was like, what strategic value does Vladimir Putin have right now economically? Look, you want to make the argument that Putin's 20-year plan is to invade Poland? Fine. But right now, what we're dealing with, this makes total sense in terms of bringing oil into the Mediterranean, competing with on the oil market. And you telling me that Vladimir Putin is a comic book villain who wants to take over the world means nothing. It says nothing about his strategy, nothing about where he's placing his troops. When I look at this, I'm like, oh, right. He wants the land bridge into Crimea to secure it so that you can't kick him out. He's gotten it. That seems like a military goal. It seems like Ukraine's lost this one, and we're dumping money down the toilet.
A question I got for you, Jimmy, is why is it? Because no matter where you went, the Democrats all had the Ukrainian flag, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. The other day we're in New York where Yankees game gets canceled. We go to a bowling event. The UN is in New York. Bill Clinton shows up with his
Ukraine
We're
pin.
talking to him, and he's got the Ukraine pin on, right, instead of the red, white, and blue. But why are Democrats now dropping? This is not like a small difference, by the way. They went from 81 to 52. Republicans, 56 to 35. Independents, 50. This is not a small number. Why do you think now people are saying, guys, we got to stop?
I think because they're starting to hear counter narratives be fed. Like they're hearing from people like Tucker Carlson, my show, Rusty Rockets, so it's starting to seep in the truth about what's going on over there, and they see how they don't give a shit about America. So I remember I had Marianne Williamson on my show a month or two ago, and she's pro-Ukraine war and funding it, and I was like, why do you think that they're doing that? And she's like, well, we're trying to help the people of Ukraine. I go, if you think this is about helping people, don't you think we'd start helping people here in America first, which is what Tim just said 5 minutes ago? Why wouldn't we start here if we really, of course they don't care about people. They don't even take care of the people in Maui right now. They're nothing. They don't give a shit about them. They got people living under every bridge. Nobody cares. It's not about the people. They wouldn't even give us health care. People still go bankrupt when they get sick in America, the only Western country that happens in. So this is all about money laundering And why is the numbers going down? I think because people are starting to realize this is stupid, and all the money we're sending, they're starting to get another counter narrative. Bobby Kennedy's out there talking about it, and it's getting talked about on Joe Rogan. And so that's the biggest platform in the world, right? So people are starting to hear a counter narrative before, and now they're starting to get caught up to what the game is happening. That's what I think's happening.
So let me follow up on that. So you saw the GOP debate, the second one that took place, right? And whether it was
I did not.
Oh, you didn't see it? Okay, so Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, a lot of them are still pro funding the Ukrainian war. But if their campaign manager or their helpers are sitting there saying, guys, 81 to 52, 56 to 35, 57 to 44, this is not a winning, like, what are you doing? The American people are sick of this spending. Why are they still sticking to their position to defend that?
Because they're sticking to their loyalty isn't to the American people. Their loyalty is to their donors. And their donor class wants this, right? So the donor class is Wall Street, the fossil fuel companies, and the military-industrial complex. And they want this, and that's that, and they don't serve the people. And that's what Matt Gaetz is talking about, and that's why they're booing him in Congress, because he's talking about giving the Congress back to the people, and they can't have that because they want it to be owned by the donor class, which it is.
And look how brilliant it is, though, Jimmy. Like, first they, like, remember when it came out, Pat, like, remember that first 6 months? Ukraine, everybody had the flag. Everybody had it on Instagram, just like when BLM, everybody put that black square like it did shit. Like that black square did anything. But then, Pat, look at their brilliance, Jimmy. They do all that. Then it gets to the point where the word is out. But now it's like, it's too late. We already gave the money. We're already embedded. What are you going to do? Just like the border. Look at the border. For almost 4 years, Mayorkas, all these assholes are like, no, it's not a crisis. Not now. Now they're like, yeah, it's time to build a wall. Too late. There's 7 fucking million people here. Sorry for my language. 7 million.
But the reason for it is because now you got Democrats in these big cities complaining.
Yep.
So their party members are saying, hey, we're dealing with a problem. It's going to cost us votes. And they're like, okay, we'll build the wall now.
Yeah.
But maybe this war in Ukraine has woken up the people that maybe never woke up about that stuff. Just operated on a following.
And I wouldn't be surprised if Zelensky's on a plane right now to go to the White House to be like, hey, listen, don't do nothing, Israel, don't get involved. That's my money. Don't help them at all.
I think to Tim's point, this is my question for Tim. This is why I think you made such a great point. You know, the whole America First agenda. When you heard that first from Trump, there's a lot of people that basically labeled that racist. America first, fuck the rest of the world, basically. Hold on, what? Hold on, what's going on here? But you pointedly gave the example of things like Flint or in Pennsylvania, whatever, these things. And now Americans are realizing, hold on. I was fed, this Ukraine thing for 6, 12, 18 months. What's going on here in Flint? But here's my question to you. When we asked you about, your knowledge of Israel, like I don't follow this much. Dude, you just almost like you are like a battlefield general in Ukraine. You know this inside out. Is this something that you've been following for 18 months or
to be
10
fair,
years?
I was there just before the coup happened in 2014 or 20. So I went there in 2013. I produced a couple documentaries for Vice breaking down what was going on, and I talked to a lot of people there. I actually got to. I wasn't there when they toppled the statue of Lenin, but I got there literally right afterwards and saw the statue ripped down, and people were smashing it with hammers. It was a crazy sight to see. So I have friends there. The country's fantastic. The food's great. The people are awesome. And it was a really amazing trip for me when I was down there from 2013 to 2014. And then watching how it has devolved since then, I think, I don't know what the intention was, I suppose what the United States machine was hoping to get out of coverage from something like me, from someone like me or whatever. All that ended up happening was I despise the efforts of the West to exacerbate this war more, having been there and met people there. And I have friends who they fled the country. And for what reason? This goes back, right? I may not be able to tell you about the inner workings. Actually, you know what? I got to stop. I actually probably do know a decent amount about Ukraine, considering
clearly
the Burisma stuff, considering right, all of this. I'll give you the simple version. I am but a humble man who complains on the internet. I read news stories and I read reports. I read academic articles sometimes about the region, and I remember a lot of these articles. So my understanding of what's happening there is, I would just say, news cursory, and there are individuals with clearances and accesses. They probably know more than me. But this goes back to the Qatar-Turkey pipeline. I'm sure you guys are familiar. Are you familiar with this?
Yes.
So The United States, the West, wanted a pipeline from Qatar up through Syria and Turkey into Europe to displace the Gazprom gas monopoly. Syria said explicitly, we are allied with Russia. We will not allow you to do this. In fact, they were going to counter this pipeline by having Iran build a pipeline and run that instead, strengthening the Eastern energy monopoly, whatever you want to call it. It was explicitly reported, I'm amazed, this is in The Guardian, that in 2009, the CIA said, we will destroy Syria, we will overthrow them. Lucky for us, a few years later, a civil war breaks out. We're on the side of the rebels because this is a country that said, we will not allow you to build a pipeline. All of this then connects into, you have the Gazprom gas monopoly, which its pipeline runs through Ukraine. All of a sudden, this energy company pops up in Ukraine where we've got a former CIA director, Hunter Biden, on the board. And now everything we're learning with the investigation into the Bidens, into Hunter Biden, Devin Archer testifying, Hunter Biden calls D.C. and says, we need help. Joe Biden then flies out, says, fire the prosecutor. You know, I'll simplify this for you. Mykola Zlochevsky, the founder of Burisma, it's an energy company. We have massive interests in building these energy companies. He is accused of corruption. He is under investigation by Viktor Shokin, the prosecutor in Ukraine. He flees the country after his assets are frozen. Joe Biden comes in and says, oh, the prosecutor's corrupt, fire him. Conveniently, right after his son calls D.C. saying, I need help because they're feeling this pressure. Several months later, Shokin finally resigns, and guess what? Mykola Zlochevsky returns to the country. Now, hold on. I thought this guy is accused of corruption, but he comes back. Joe Biden says at the CFR meeting that we got in someone who was solid, someone who was solid, who cleared this guy. Guess what? When Donald Trump made that phone call saying, what's going on with this? Homie fled the country again. Yep. Because he knew the investigations were back on. There is absolute corruption. And the fascinating thing is that all of this is in the media. You see it reported. But my favorite example of how the media is a spattering of CIA, FBI, whatever you want to call it, and sometimes real journalists, is just after the 2016 election, Politico reported that Ukrainian officials interfered in the U.S. election to assist Hillary Clinton. Politico has this. You can pull this up. Then, about a year or two later, Politico reported that very story they reported was Russian disinformation without retracting their own story that this has been happening. So I could talk 50 billion years about all this stuff, but I think that's my point.
You know what? That's the thing people don't realize about Syria, which Bobby Kennedy was on to, and that's where I found out about that gas pipeline was for Bobby Kennedy years ago in like 2017. I'm like, why is there a war, and why does the CIA want to overthrow Assad? And it turns out that's why we got in bed with. So right now we're in bed with Nazis in Ukraine, legit Hitler Nazis, but in Syria we were in bed with Al Qaeda and Al Nusra and the people who
ISIS.
and ISIS, our sworn enemies. Go ahead.
Just to add, the Canadian Parliament gave a standing ovation to a Nazi.
To a Nazi.
Right.
Hitler
98-year-old.
No background check.
And so people don't realize that's what all that Assad was. And Tulsi Gabbard stood up and told the truth about that. And that's why they had to smear her as a Russian agent and all that stuff. Because whoever tells the truth about our foreign policy when the game that's being played, they immediately get called an Assadist, or you get called a Putin puppet, or they would call you a Saddam puppet or a traitor to the country. And they're doing the same thing. They're doing it in Iraq. They're doing it in Libya. They're doing it in Syria. They're doing it in Ukraine. It's all the same shit, and people don't wake up. I can't believe that people who saw them do Iraq, and then nobody really looked into Libya, and then they saw them do Syria. They got tricked into Syria again, and the same game in Ukraine. I can't believe they're falling for this over and over.
Here's what it is. Here's what I'm noticing with the trend. They come in saying, I think they will believe us for a year.
Yeah, that's all they need.
And then that's all we need. And with the year, we'll sell enough supplies to make money. And then all of a sudden, that 81 on Democrat support goes to 52.
That's right.
Republican goes 56-35. And then the Independent goes 57-44. And by far, the best meme I've seen as a person who's an entrepreneur. I support small business owners, especially some of them that want to work from home, do something part-time. There isn't anybody that's done a better job. You know, Rob, if you have this, if you can pull this up, please. I want to make sure the audience sees this. He is the GOAT of working from home. Last month, I made $40 billion working from home. Yeah. Learn how.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.